GM, welcome to another Touchgrass podcast episode. Today we have Kenny from Manta. Manta is definitely going through a different direction. I wanted to get Kenny on to talk a lot more about it. I'm very close friends with Shubham as well, as most of you must know, who's also part of the Manta team. Kenny, it's awesome to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be on, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been quite a journey over on the Manta side, and all those 5 years of building have finally led up to me being on this podcast.
Awesome.
Finally.
That's a great way. Great. Well, Kenny, the podcast did start a year ago. But yeah, Kenny, start us off. You started building Manta 5 years ago. We'll talk about the new direction in a minute and the new products that you guys are building. But what was the initial thesis, and how has that evolved to where we are before the pivot or before the new direction?
Yeah. So, 5 years in the crypto space it feels like eternity, right? It's like you're trapped in time, except, things are actually moving, but they're moving at light speed. And so you can't really catch them all. But, when we started 5 years ago, the first thing we were working on was actually on-chain privacy. And so we built out the fastest on-chain ZKL1. I think still the fastest prover today. And it was specifically for private transactions. But and I know now it's such a hot topic, especially with the recent sort of like Zcash wave and everything. But we were there before it was cool. But it was too early. It was too uncool, to the point where we didn't really have users. And so we built out this amazing technology that didn't have users. And what we learned quickly at that stage was that an amazing product with no users is simply a great laboratory experiment. And so with Manta, right, we're not out to build a lab experiment. We're out to actually build mass adoption. And so we decided the next logical step is let's figure out where the users actually are. And that pivoted us into our L2. And so we built and launched the first modular L2. And we were using Celestia at the time for it. I think by now it's probably been like 3 years. So, that was pretty fun. When we launched, we were one of 4 L2s on the market. And so the differentiation was extremely clear, right? We had much higher throughput. We had much lower gas fees. And it made a lot of sense. And so we saw a lot of growth in the early days for our L2, which is called Manta Pacific. Fast forward to 2 years later, we're one of like 500 different L2s out there. And the technology differentiation is just no longer there, right? It's all essentially become a commodity. And, that's the time that we basically faced the music. And we realized, okay, well, it's probably time to pivot again. And so that's where it brings us to where we are today, where we decided, to get even closer to the users, we wanted to focus a lot on the application layer. And so we introduced Manta Labs recently. And within Manta Labs, we've already released 2 products. One is Super Fortune, one is Junk Fund. Both are, growing quite rapidly. Super Fortune right now has about 19,000 daily active users. It's the largest AI app on BNB chain. And Junk Fund is currently at about like 15,000 daily active users. Just launched that about a week ago. It's on Solana. And so, with this application extension, our goal ultimately has always been mass adoption and building practical use cases for users. And so I think doing this application layer makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I've been seeing a lot of chatter from VCs on the timeline talk about how ecosystem teams will pivot into doing more things closer to the user on the application layer. How long was it before the team sort of got to the conclusion that we need to form Manta Labs and do this? Like, what were the sort of conversations you were in? Did you talk to your investors? Did you talk to, the team? Like, was there any pushback? How did that unfold for you guys?
Yeah, there was a lot of pushback. There was pushback even from myself, my own self-doubt on this, right? Because the scariest thing you want to do is make a pivot and then no one is excited about it, no one adopts the product, then like you're dead in the water, right? Like that would be insane. Imagine we launched these products, no one cared about it, then it looks like Manta just has no idea what it's doing anymore, right? And so that was my biggest fear going into all of this. What if it doesn't work? Especially at such a critical time where L2s are basically dying left and right, right? Like maybe they're not dying in a public sense, but let's face it, many of them are just kind of sitting there waiting for their treasury funds to dry up, right? And so, like this is the worst time, the most risky time to do such a pivot. So I'd say there was a lot of planning that went into this. In fact, the discussion around Manta Labs had been happening for about a year now. And we started early product development with Super Fortune, probably half a year ago. And we have a lot of other products in development as well that have started pretty early on. And we've only recently started kind of pushing it out. I do think a lot of ecosystems, a lot of these infrastructure projects are going to be headed in this direction. I've, read about it on the news, with I remember like Eclipse talked about it like a month or two ago as well. I've heard it from talking with founders. I think one of the main differences though, with how we're approaching this versus how a lot of these other projects are thinking is when it comes to the application layer, right? Like I won't name any names. So let's just say, I don't know, Kenny L2, right? Like Kenny L2 is thinking about how to build killer apps and bring people to Kenny L2. With Manta, our priority is not bringing people over to our L2 or our L1. Our priority is to acquire as many users as possible and generate as much revenue as possible in, as short amount of time as possible. And that we believe can only be accomplished by going towards the ecosystems where the users actually are. That's Solana. That's BNB chain, right? That's Base. And so these are these active ecosystems that we're exploring in order to bring the applications out and get to as many users as possible. And it's been working.
100%. I think, as I said, there are like 500 L2s, and every week we are seeing there's still a lot of new ones are getting funded every week.
I'm sure one does love that.
Because like talk me to through this identity crisis that so many of these projects have been facing over the last 1 year. Because narratives change fast in crypto. Right now, privacy is like very hard, and everyone is throwing money at it and seeing what sticks. But in a couple of months, a new narrative can pick up. How hard has it been for you to kind of just pick something and go with it in terms of we're going to go all in AI or we are going to go all in consumer? Like, how is that experience like when you're trying to pivot and find what's the best thing for us to acquire users instead of just chasing one narrative after another?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that a lot of crypto falls victim to this sort of trend mentality. The problem with the trend mentality is that it's fleeting. It's extremely temporary. And by the time you launch a product, who knows? Maybe you're in the heart of it. Maybe no one cares about it anymore, right? Like I think one of the trends was like X402, right? Like I saw tons of people talking about it last week. I don't really see people talking about it anymore. Do you guys? I don't know. Like, yeah. So it's like, and like another example a while back was like inscriptions, right? Like that happened on Bitcoin and then it made its way over to Ethereum ecosystem. And then within a month, it's gone. Everything's gone, right? And so like, that's the risk of chasing these sort of hype trends. You don't know when the bubble's going to burst and people are on to the next thing. And so when we started building these products, our primary focus, our priority was not what's hot in the market right now. Our priority was what can we do to acquire as many users as possible and make as much money as possible. And I think that should be everyone's priority, right?
Yeah.
And so like, I want to give you an example with like the junk fund conversation, right? Junk fund, the way that it happened, it actually came out from myself because I am an avid meme coin trader. And so I have hundreds of meme coins in my Solana wallets that are just sitting there that are worthless because I'm a bad trader. I buy and hold instead of buy and sell. And so some of them, like I got like 10x, 100x, and then I didn't sell it. And now it's, round tripped. But then I started looking on chain on Solana and I saw there's millions of wallet addresses out there that have all of these dead meme coins that they don't know what to do with it. And so could we do something to try to figure out how to give people a second chance at those dead meme coins? Because if we could do it successfully, then all of those millions of wallet addresses are our clients, our users. And that makes perfect sense, because then, like when we actually launched it, we had a goal in mind. We knew exactly what our user looked like. And, the revenue has been very, very decent for a product that we pushed out in like a month, which was pretty insane. So like, we're not focused on the trends, right? Like the reason why Super Fortune is the top AI app on BNB chain is not because it's AI. It's because it's providing, predictions and stuff for people that they actually are interested in on a day-to-day basis when they're making trades. So that's why I think our products are very fun. They're very refreshing. They're not just another sort of airdrop hunt. These are things that people are actually using and paying for.
That makes sense. And I've been seeing a lot of the Indian, well, I wouldn't say cabal, but a lot of Indian people in my circles have just been using it. I've been seeing a lot of video content being pushed out. Kenny, on the talk of trends and Zcash, was there ever a thought in the team's mind like, hey, let's just go back to the first product and just rebrand it, relaunch it? Did you guys ever think about that?
We're thinking about it now.
Okay.
But the way that I'll tell you, the way that we're thinking about it is not like at the beginning when I said we're not forcing people to come back to Manta on the infrastructure level in order to use these products, because I think that's a huge uphill battle, right? Just to tell people to bridge over is, you have to provide tons of incentive, and the activity isn't really sustainable. And so instead, we're trying to figure out how to work with the right partners to get this to market. Partners that already have users that are doing PayFi transactions on a daily basis. And then we can enable and facilitate that even better with on-chain privacy. So that's how we're thinking about it, right? Like at the end of the day, we're not subscribing to this idea that you have to be married to a particular infrastructure. We're just focused on, how do we get these products to market to the users as quickly as possible? And so it's same thing with the privacy payment. Yeah.
Got it. And
I think,
go for KJ.
yeah, I was just thinking about this whole privacy thing, right? Like, I know that it's a kind of right now hot ball of money just flowing from one thing to another. But if people are, really bullish on it, I'm bullish on it. I think Mert said it, and I keep saying it to people that if crypto wins and privacy fails, crypto fails. I think that's like a good kind of tagline for the whole thing. And I feel like you can't force people to shield transaction from a normal user, and that's kind of very hard. I wanted to know, as someone who's been, building privacy tech even 5 years back when it was not cool, do you think like the whole system should be where, when you download some new app, it automatically asks in the terms and conditions that do you want your transactions to be private? And before you do anything, you accept, and everything is private from there on. Do you think that kind of uh, user flow is needed, where people decide just once that their transactions are private and they don't need to do it every single time? Is that like what's needed for privacy to kind of actually be used?
Yeah, I think we're thinking on the same page. Being one of the, I guess, early pioneers on-chain privacy, I've thought a lot about this, because you can't force people to use privacy. You're absolutely right, because no one cares about it until it's too late, right? Like everyone thinks that everything's safe, and that's exactly why Facebook has become such a large company, right? Well, now Meta, and there's exactly why Google has become such a large company, because people don't care about their privacy. They think that it's safe. They think that it's worth whatever they're willing to give up to get whatever they're trying to get. And so, even before Web3, even before crypto, humanity has essentially been conditioned to not care about their privacy on the internet. And then all of a sudden, you want to bring in crypto, and you have to tell people, "Hey, you should care about your privacy." It's futile, right? People don't care, and so you have to put it in passively. It has to be done, I think, on the infrastructure level, which is exactly why we did it on the L1. And, I even go a step beyond just asking people whether they want privacy, and just put privacy in by default. I think that, like, that's exactly how things work right now. When you make a credit card transaction, it doesn't show to the whole world, right? And no one's complaining about that, right? I'm not complaining and being like, "Hey, why didn't I see your coffee transactions this morning? Like, what are you guys doing? It's totally sus." No one talks like that, right? It's just completely private. And so for blockchain to actually succeed, I believe that privacy has to be built purely on the infrastructure level. Otherwise, like, it just becomes a massive surveillance tool, right? It's a huge invasion of privacy. If everyone can see that I go to this Starbucks in the corner of this road every single 8 a.m. and make this purchase, like, what are the implications in terms of stalking and privacy and crime and all that stuff, right? And I'm just one person. Scale that out to billions of people. Um, yeah, so I do think, like, it has to be on the infrastructure level and has to be very passive.
Yeah, I think a lot of alpha hunting will go away once the entire privacy thing settles down. Like, you won't be able to see Hasib's XYZ transaction that makes you ape in. Kenny, reeling it back to Manta Labs, uh, how's the community reception been? You know, obviously Manta has like a huge community. I've interacted with the Manta community a lot when I travel to conferences with Shubham. How's the community been after this announcement?
Yeah, I think the sentiment has been extremely positive because, honestly, the community, and I'm sure that every L2 community is kind of looking the same way. They're just basically seeing the project and they're just kind of watching it slowly dwindle. And so, being able to actually pivot out of that and bring something refreshing to the table has ultimately been very positive for everyone on our side. And then on top of that, to see it become so successful, right? Like, that builds a lot of sort of momentum, and that's the momentum we wanted to capture. That's exactly what we're seeing. So overall, it's been a great direction.
Awesome. And when you think about these new product ideations, you know, with the current two products you have, as sort of someone who's driving the ship, do you have any thoughts on, okay, this is how many products we want to launch, or this is the bandwidth we have? Like, how do you prioritize between the reason? Okay, and I can deep dive into why I'm asking these questions. I would assume now that you guys have started the trend, you know, it's now out there that L2s can do this and it's okay, and the community reception will be positive. I assume that a lot more L2s will now be looking in this direction. If an L2 founder is listening to this, you know, this is probably something that it would help them. Like, assume someone who's been building an L2 for the past 2-3 years. Now they're certainly working at a venture studio that also has L2 baggage. Like, how would you think about how many products we should launch? Or, you know, you talked about the quickest number of users with the quickest number of revenue. Like, what inspires that? Like, how can you prioritize as a founder thinking about this?
Yeah. So, first of all, to all the founders that are watching this, I highly encourage the pivot. I know it's scary, but, like, it's necessary, right? Like, and I can't promise that it's going to go well, but it's better than sitting on your ass. Second of all, if it goes well, I'll drop my wallet address so you can give me some advisory tokens for this great advice. Uh, the whole idea of this sort of product pivot, right? Like, one of the actual concerns that I had was, I don't want people to think Manta's just become some sort of venture studio, right? Like, we're not just pumping out 20 different products and then we'll see what sticks, and hopefully one of them 10x's or something. And so we're extremely curated on how we're doing this. But at the same time, right, like, you have to strike this balance, because simply putting out one product and calling it a day, I don't think that does anything justice, because there's so much risk involved, so much that's out of your own control that could ultimately lead to the failure of any sort of product, that, like, I don't think it would be wise to just put one out and call it a day. That would be a complete pivot to one specific application. And so the way that we think about it is very much about capacity planning with the team. We have a team of 40 people all over the world. And these 40 people, we dedicate them specifically to different products or the core Manta growth. And so people that are on Super Fortune are tasked with making sure and ensuring the entire success of Super Fortune. People that are on Junk Fund are tasked with and ensuring the entire success of Junk Fund. And so it's like having mini CEOs within these sort of groups. And so I think that's what's been very successful for us, right? We don't have one team of people working on 3 or 4 different products all at once, because that's going to be failure, right? Like, our partnerships people that are talking about partnerships with Junk Fund are only talking about partnerships with Junk Fund. our partnerships, people talking about Super Fortune are only talking about Super Fortune. It's as if they work for those projects, but those projects are all under the umbrella of Manta. And so, with that being said, for us, we only have capacity to launch one more product, which is coming out at the end of this year. It's on the DeFi side. We're really excited about that. But even that product, it's not fully built in-house. It's actually built by a completely separate team because we don't have that capacity, nor do we want to sacrifice the quality of the products that we're pushing out currently. And so, we're not a venture studio in the sense that we're not trying to build out 20 different things, get one person to do 4 different projects and pretend they're like doing all these different, responsibilities, but rather we're making very concerted bets and planning out very, very detailed strategies and measuring those strategies on a daily basis, right? Like I have daily planning calls with the Super Fortune team, and I have daily planning calls with the Junk Fund team, and I have daily planning calls with the Manta team. And so it's very interesting. It's like almost running 3 companies at once.
100%. You mentioned like the third product that's coming out is kind of mix of in-house and outside personnel, but what are you doing currently where you're attracting other developers to come and build on Manta? Is it kind of grants or hackathons, or what is
I
it
think
that you're doing where?
that's what Kenny was saying. Like they're not doing that anymore. So Kenny, what I assumed was, if there's someone right out there who has an idea and they're like, okay, I want to build this within the Manta Labs wing, they could pitch it to you or anyone on the team, and then you'd be like, okay, maybe this makes sense on BNB. Let's go talk to those guys, and we will dedicate resources towards building this. Are we catching it right in terms of philosophy?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a huge win-win, right? Because like I'll be blunt, like no one says I want to go build on Manta. That's my final ultimate goal, right? They look at Base, they look at Solana, they look at BNB, and then they look at the category of all the other L2s, and they see grant farming opportunity. They see stepping stone, right? It's like if people had the opportunity to go to MIT, they would take it. But if they can't, they'll go somewhere else in the meantime. So like, we're that someone else. And so, when you accept that reality, you realize that simply putting out grants for ecosystem growth is not the way forward, because you're only going to encourage that type of mercenary activity. And so we've basically flipped the entire grant script on its head, and we said, okay, we don't care where you deploy. You don't have to do it on Manta, and we don't even force you to do it on Manta, not on our L2 or our L1. But wherever you deploy, it has to make perfect sense. And then on top of that, you have to be the right team that can help scale that out. And so our efforts are more so around co-growing, co-building, rather than just trying to put it on the Manta ecosystem on the infrastructure layer and just call it a day. And we've seen, we're talking with a few projects specifically on that. And our only requirement is revenue share. And so if you're successful, then we get a cut of it because we've been helping to make you successful. But at the same time, what that tells us, it makes it very easy for our team to decide whether or not a project is worth it. If we truly believe it can make money and we can share in that money, then it's worth it. But if not, then it's not the right fit for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then it's sort of like private equity in that aspect. Like you're still incubating, but you have that aspect where you think about revenue in that way. Kenny, do you have any advice, like when you talk to these teams, how do they, like you built one on BNB, there's one on Solana, I would assume the DeFi one maybe on BNB or Solana or Base, as you mentioned, all 3 ecosystems. What's your advice to these ecosystems that pitch to you in terms of the ecosystems they build on? Do you think it actually matters if they choose Solana, BNB, or Base, or build on all 3 of them?
It matters a lot because, there's a reason why we launched Junk Fund on Solana, and there's a reason why we launched Super Fortune on BNB chain. So, where you deploy matters, not just in the sense of technology. And in fact, I think technology, especially now, it matters a little bit less, although the difference between Solana and EVM environments is drastic, right? And so I'll tell you why, in our thinking, why it made sense for Junk Fund to launch on Solana and and Super Fortune to launch on BNB chain, because when you think about junk fund, it basically, we're a meme recycler, the world's first Web3 trash can, where people dump their meme coins and other dead tokens and they get out rewards. And so it's a super novel idea. People love it, and that's why we're getting so many recurring users. But the first thought that comes to mind when people ask us is like, why only Solana? Because BNB chain has tons of memes, Base has tons of memes. That's true, but we can't do this methodology on BNB chain or Base. One, because of the architectural design of Solana, we're able to actually get money out of every single dead meme coin. That's not necessarily true for the dead meme coins on EVM. Second thing is, EVM-based token contracts are so highly customizable that you can put malicious code in there pretty dang easily, right? And so that could hurt a person when they're trying to junk a dead meme coin. On Solana, the tokens are all standardized. You don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. And so it makes it a very safe playing environment. And so it makes sense for us to launch it on Solana. And it doesn't make sense for us to launch it in other environments because there's no other environments with millions of meme coin wallet addresses. And so it makes perfect sense. And then same with Super Fortune. Super Fortune, the way that we're, the methodology behind Super Fortune is all around Eastern metaphysics. Specifically right now, it's around feng shui and bazi. And that captures a Chinese audience, a Vietnamese audience, a Korean audience, Japanese audience, right? And that's all concentrated in the East. Base's large demographic is all in the West. BNB chain's large demographic is all in the East. And so if we want to capture all those users and not have to educate them on exactly how this works and all this other stuff, right? Like, it makes perfect sense to target the ecosystem that has this base of users that are already familiar with this sort of stuff. And so, like, I think it definitely makes a lot of difference depending on what type of ecosystem you launched on. If we launched junk.fun on Base on day one, probably users would have been hacked with the weird malicious tokens, and the user experience would have been terrible, and we wouldn't be able to make nearly as much revenue, and therefore we can't give nearly as many rewards to people. So yeah, it makes a big difference.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like each ecosystem has a team, has a region where they capitalize, and deploying where it matters is like, I think that's one of the biggest decisions you, as sort of the driving force, are probably ingrained to in that entire process, and then everything sort of falls into place after that. How have the ecosystem teams been receptive to this? Like, I would assume you're connected to the BNB team, Solana team. Are they helping out within this process as well?
Yeah, I'd say that, like, definitely more connected on the BNB side. Ultimately, it's what can I say? They can help with pushing on the marketing, right? They can help you get in front of their audience, but to acquire that audience, to get them to sign up, and more importantly, to get them to pay, that's ultimately up to you, right? Like, no amount of support from the foundation is going to change that. Just like it's the same with KOLs almost. Like, the foundations themselves are essentially like a larger, extremely targeted version of KOLs, right? Like, influencers can talk about your product, they can get people excited about it, but whether or not people use it, it's all up to how good your product is and how much value it brings.
Kenny, I think we're hitting the 30 mark. One last question that I had for you. As a team that's looking to optimize users and revenue, having launched 2 products, has there been any metric tracking in terms of, okay, how do you decide that the product, it's time to switch over to a next focus? Have you thought about that in terms of, if the junk fund, like, imagine all the meme coins on Solana go away, what happens after that? Like, when do you decide it's time to shift focus, move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still so early that we haven't even thought about that yet.
Okay.
Right? Junk Fun is only about like a week and a half old, and it's already gotten 100,000 users, and 50,000 of those 100,000 people already participated in the first season. And so, like, we're so focused on trying to figure out how to grow even that momentum, which is a really hard task, that we don't want to worry about what happens if it fails right now.
Yeah, I think the number of dying meme coins will only increase from here
I
on
hope.
Solana.
funds, yeah, for junk fun, I hope so.
Yeah, the junk fund launch video was pretty awesome, by the way. Like I saw it immediately, and I was like, I have to try this out. I think I tried it like day 2 or day 3. So that was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah.
Kenny,
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, the other thing that I would recommend people do from the founder perspective is like, I don't think that crypto people and projects take advantage of AI enough. Like, if you look on Junk Fun, we used AI to design everything. Like, we were able to pump out videos that were pretty fun and entertaining and all that stuff every 2 days because of using AI tools, right? Like a normal sort of animator, it would take them 2 weeks in order to get something like that out. And so we have a very forward thinking design team that knows, or not just knows, learns and educates themselves on how to use these tools. And the ROI is huge. And so, yeah, glad you brought up the video part.
Yeah, I feel like with the rise of AI, as a founder, it must be a lot easier to have smaller teams run projects like this, because the output of one person can be amplified. Like a coder can be helped with AI, the designer can be helped with AI. I think the only part that AI can't do right now is the strategy part. Like there's no way AI can help you get users on chain. And in terms of like crypto, it's outrageous because they have no clue on what's going on. But yeah, Kenny, thanks so much for hopping on. I think this has been a great one-on-one in terms of how L2 founders should think about the next road. I think this has been a great sort of deep dive into everything that you're doing at Manta Labs. I'm really, really bullish. And, I'm very excited to test out new products as well. I think this has also been a great episode in terms of if there are builders out there who want to build products with Manta Labs associated, I think it gives them a pavement of, Kenny and the team are very open to those suggestions and having those conversations. So thank you so much for coming on, and this has been great.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Great conversation.
Bye guys.